I'm Peter Maid. I'm the President of South Australian Secondary Principals Association. And despite these difficult times, it is uplifting to see a number of you in the room tonight willing to come together as a community of learners and hear a little more about the resource that's been developed by the Education Department, SASPA and SAPA. This might not be the best photo, Kim. It's Jean managing me. Jean might like that photo. No? But, so, oh, okay. Jean's driving, by the way. So, Peter Philp, can I ask, how is this for you? He's gone.
No, I'm here. Yep. You should be able to see me on the screen.
Online. How are things for you, Cherie? Can you hear us?
I can see the room and I can hear you. And on the left hand of my screen, I have a picture of Jane. With
yes.
Pause.
It says pause by presenter.
It does. It's pretty cool. Well done.
All right. Kim, what's that? We're transitioning. What's that phrase that you use? We're in a transition phase at the moment. Please bear with us. Okay. I can chew gum and walk at the same time, so I'll just keep going. The information that you have on your tables tonight is basically a bit of a sketched map of where we want to go this afternoon, but it may be, particularly given a number of people joining us online, that the discussion activity that we've listed there is contracted so that we can make sure that we engage people who are doing this in distance mode, who therefore don't have to sit around for 40 minutes. If we can make that 10 or 15 minutes, that might be a good thing given this hybrid or blended learning approach that we're using tonight. The back of that program, if you could turn that over now, before I introduce you to the poster that we're working with this evening, I just wanted to step you through where we've come from. So South Australia's always had a very strong pedagogical DNA, and that goes back to the days when we had an amazing Executive Director of Curriculum, whose name is Garth Boomer. And since that time, we've always prided ourselves on being strong around teaching and learning and what makes the most difference in our classrooms. So I don't want to go that far back, but I would like to go back to 2009 when the resources that became the South Australian Teaching for Effective Learning framework were developed by a group of educators in schools alongside expert consultants out of schools. And those resources still stand very strong today. And in fact, from a national perspective, there are other state jurisdictions, in the absence of having their own framework, who draw upon the work of the TEFL framework today. So just for those of you who aren't necessarily that familiar with it, I've just grabbed a quick quote from the preamble from those materials. Developing a whole school approach to pedagogy through building common language, shared meaning, and collective commitment to action provides the basis for alignment of practice and a focused learning culture. Who wouldn't be excited about a resource that helped you generate that in your school? Fast forward to 2012-13, and Jim Davies, the former president of the South Australian Secondary Principals Association, is in the room, and Jim will remember, as will other colleagues, the development of SASPA's 2020 educational roadmap. It signposted things like the differences between 20th century learning and 21st century learning. Change agenda that schools needed to undertake, and it signposted the change agenda that the system might need to undertake. in order to make the paradigm shift that we were arguing for. Fast forward to 2015, and you'll see a discussion paper there that is referenced as Educating for the 21st Century. Now, we're already at the start of the third decade of the 21st century, so we acknowledge that that title is, null and void. But what that document tried to do was to undertake an exercise that illustrated what we meant by learning in the second and third decades of this century, what we meant by teaching, and what we meant by leading the teaching and learning in our schools around that. And it was at that point that SASPA advocated to the department that it would be useful for us to co-design a piece of work that spoke to both TEFL and educating in the 21st century and recognised the value of the roadmap and our ITSA materials and other supportive documents. So that was September 2015. Fast forward to this year, and we've actually got such a co-designed document. But one of the instruments that helped us get there was from 2017 through to today, the Learning, Design and Assessment Moderation program that's been running out of the department's professional practice unit has been very influential in shaping where we've come to today. So that program, and again, I've just lifted one very small quote out of a large and very influential resource. Actually, I've reworded this. Sorry, Val. Learning design brings together the trinity of the what, the Australian curriculum, with the how, teaching for effective learning, and the how will we know if they've got it, which is the evidence of learning piece, which is obviously very critical. So when you think about the pedigree that Garth Boomer left us, the legacy, if you like, that he left us with South Australian teaching and learning, since then we've had 5 significant pieces of work, one of which we'll share with you tonight, that we think he would be very proud of as being a connective piece in our DNA in South Australia. So the piece that's in front of you started as an infographic. Those of you who know what an infographic is will know that this is not an infographic. This is actually a poster. And it's a set of posters where the first poster shows everything, and posters 2, 3 and 4 reference a piece of the pie from the main poster. And there are 13 questions within that poster that are the basis for a dialogic engagement between teachers and leaders in schools that we think speaks to what we should be valuing with regards to the translation of curriculum, pedagogy, and how do we know if they've got it. So, time to have a quick read, and I'm going to invite Val Westwell to the microphone because I've seen Val scribbling some notes, and I should have said from the outset, we've had apologies from Margot Foster, the Director of Professional Practice, Deb Merritt, formerly with Professional Practice, now with Orbis, Val referred to herself as the last one standing, but I think Val brings with her considerable wisdom about the journey that we've been on, and as one of the partners in the design of this, I'd like to ask Val to join me to talk with you about the poster and its intentions. So Val, I'm going to keep the radio mic, and if you take that one, and I'm told that's the camera. So that's my best side. Actually, okay. That's my best side.
I'm out of shot.
Yeah,
right,
so you come over here.
Out of shot was good, but Thank you.
This is going to make a great recording, isn't it?
Yes, I'm delighted.
Nobody uploads this to
delighted
YouTube.
to be last man standing. I think actually the truth of that email was I put last man standing brackets almost. I've had several sleepless nights. I have 2 sons in Canada, and I've spent the last few days trying to get flights to get them back home to me. So yes, last man standing almost. And not expecting to speak tonight because 2 people before me were standing until, at least Deb was still standing until this afternoon. So I think the thing that I'd like to add to what Peter's talked about already is just that this was a real collaboration between, in fact, our role in it, Margot, Deb, myself, was really listening for the first several meetings that Peter chaired on this. It was really listening to principals talking about the conversations that they wanted to be having with their teachers and how they were trying to capture that and their aspirations for teaching and learning in something.
Oh, now it's working. But I pressed that button a number of times. It didn't work. How weird.
That's good. So having something simple that they could kind of point to. So I guess before, probably the most useful way to do this is for you to have some time to look at this and talk with each other, and then I'll talk again. But I guess the thing I would draw your attention to as you look at this was what we brought to the table as we were listening to principals talk about the way they wanted to see teaching and learning happen in their schools, was thinking about, so where are the formative assessment strategies in this? Where are we holding to what we know about quality teaching and learning and is captured in learning design, particularly in the renamed aspects of learning design that we developed through 2019 with something over 250 to 300 teachers and leaders who were involved in the secondary years LADAM, and of course was released with the TEFL Companion this year. So when I look at this, the formative assessment strategies and aspects of learning design really jump out at me. If we think about teachers collaborating with students, that the little green section of the pie there, and that idea of a productive learning culture being developed and sustained. This is one of the things that Shirley Clark, a great kind of guru of implementing formative assessment, says is often fundamentally missed. It's in the embedding of formative assessment in schools. It's the teaching and learning culture that is evident in classrooms, that lots of the practices and processes are happening, but unless the teaching and learning culture is there, that they fall apart. And that's why, several people we worked with, many people we worked with last year, were talking about this is our 3rd run at formative assessment as a leadership team. We did this a decade ago, we had another go at it several years ago, we're going at it again. So, what's the difference? How are we going to manage this? So that idea of a productive learning culture underpinning strong formative assessment. The next one, feedback used to improve learning and performance. You can see that in that piece of pie and reflected in the teachers collaborating part. Strategy 3 of formative assessment, right there embedded in that piece. Thinking about how students own the learning, how the student ownership of learning is developed, personal and collective. So the student taking ownership of their own learning and of each other's learning, so really being collaborative. Strategies 4 and 5 of formative assessment. So we can kind of go around this, and I'll leave you to think about how learning design and formative assessment is embedded in the very fabric of this, not infographic, of this poster, yes, and just probably it's most helpful then for you to ask questions about the kind of what and why of this. So I think probably good now just to hand to people for some conversation time.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 minutes on that, and just while you do that, because you can listen and read and talk at the same time, I should have acknowledged right at the start that Angela Falkenberg, the president of SASPA, the primary principals, couldn't be with us tonight. Again, she's a little bit ill as well. And this is a partnership between SASPA, the department, but also SAPA. And whilst they were a little bit late coming to the party, the important message is that they came to the party, and as soon as they saw what we were doing, they went, well, of course, why wouldn't we want this? This is a really useful resource for primary educators as well as for secondary educators. Okay, so Peter, Maxine, Cherie, Geetha, Heather and Lauren, sorry, apparently you can't collaborate, so if you just have some quiet thinking time and maybe jot down some notes.
Okay.
And is it all...
It's me going backwards.
This is a tag team.
Tag team, me on that, right.
Yep. Yeah.
Limelight.
Hey, that was probably more than 5 minutes. So we're obviously interested in some of the understandings that emerge at the table, what this does, and maybe what this doesn't do. How you might use school setting. There's 13 questions. Where would you start? Those sorts of things. So, I'm not switched on.
All right, they could see when you remove it from the
Yeah, I'm worried about the recording. Can we erase that piece and start again?
Yeah.
Okay. For those of you who couldn't hear me, what we're really going to do now is just take comment from people around how you might use this document in a school, what it does, what it doesn't do, and if there are 13 questions, where might you start given your school's context? So who'd like to start us off? Anyone who's online, remotely, who'd like to comment?
I can have a go,
we
Peter.
can't see the
Good work,
document.
Pete. Oh, Tim was emailed. Okay. For those of you who are here in person, we wouldn't have emailed it to you, but those people who indicated that they were working remotely, Tim's just checking now, but we thought we had emailed. Oh,
Peter,
right.
we got the one pager that's got the timeline,
Yeah.
but not the other.
Yeah. Cherie, sorry, you were a late addition to remote.
I was, but I don't think Lauren got them either.
Oh, okay. Are you in the same place?
We're not at the moment. She's at home. I'm in the office. But we work in the same place. Yeah.
Can you hear
Are you
me?
text messaging?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Kim's onto it. So,
Okay, thanks.
Peter Philp, you said you could comment?
Yeah, I just had to close the door to the rabble that's outside my door. Look, just a starting comment, probably 3 points. Look, it's a really valuable document for all, obviously, but I'd see it, and I suppose each site's different, but we've got a high percentage of early career teachers here, and it's something I'd really like to use strongly with my early careers teachers, because I think it ties everything together. The Ladan strategy, the TEFL document. I really think it does that well, and I think it's a really good tying together piece of what everything a teacher should be, on about and doing. And so I think, I really look forward to using the early career teachers at KAIS. Also, the teachers collaborating with colleagues. I think the important thing is there, we do a lot of teacher collaboration, but is it deep and meaningful? And I think, using this document could bring, make some of those collaborations go really deeper. Is the collaboration leading to improved teaching and learning? And I think that's also the same with the teachers collaborating with students. Different schools are at different levels with this. And I think that's an area I know at KAIS we need to go deeper with, and we'll be able to use this document to go deeper with our collaboration with students to get improved teaching and learning, to get them more ownership of their learning, etc. So yeah, I can see many places where we'll use this. Yep.
Thanks, Peter. Meredith, I'm going to come and stand close to you, and I'm going to give you that.
Hello, Peter. It's Meredith here. Well, that did something. Past scholar of Woodville High School, Tony. Yes, he is. A couple of things. I really like that it is holistic, but I like the fact that originally it was just dot points, about what aspects you needed to cover. As soon as you change it into questions, it invites the conversation and the deeper collaboration that Peter was referring to. So I think that certainly is its strength. Your other question, Peter, is, so where do you start? What do you choose? Well, in addition to a school improvement plan, which is literacy and numeracy, you also have a school strategic plan. So you would start from what's on either of those two documents. So for some people, it would, on the school strategic plan, it would be about digital learning, use of technology. So you might start there so that those documents are enacted in your practice. So that's how I would use it.
Anyone else? Anyone online who'd like to share? Okay, Kirsty.
I don't know how close to hold it. There we go. Because everyone's going to breathe. Coronavirus, Peter. Oh, wow. I really like how it's keeping the TEFL alive. Like the TEFL was produced, what was that, back in 2009 for 2010, and you can see the TEFL language coming through. I don't know how many people's read TEFL books that are tucked away on a shelf or in a box or not even made it in their last move, and how many, I don't see teachers using it regularly, or it's not their go-to thing that they're doing. They're just busy in their everyday life. So it's actually good to see a refresh of the language coming through, particularly on that blue section, the students' understanding of their learning intentions, the engagement and challenge, that's box 5, their prior knowledge, which is box 2, that sort of stuff. Just, keeping the language alive is that sort of stuff, because at our school, we are using that 6-box design from TEFL for we apply it and adapt it to every learning design that we're doing. For student activities, for our own thinking. Every time we do a new piece of thinking, we go back to what are we trying to achieve, how we know we're going to get there, and those 6 boxes. So I really like seeing that coming back through.
Thank you. Tony, you...
I just like the simplicity of it, and because it's not 7,000 pages that we had to ask teachers to read. So I like the simplicity of it, and I like that each of the sections are actually of equal worth, even though very superficially, the teacher collaboration with the kids, with their colleagues, and also the curriculum design are all of equal importance and value, and that's what this indicates. So very superficially, just as a visual, I think that's important. Because the reason why we don't go back to TEFL is because it's, there's 2 booklets. Which book do you go to? We've read it once, so how often do we go back to it? It's embedded in our heads, but this makes it simple. What is complex, making it simple.
Thank you. Is this microphone working? Yeah?
Do with the volume up on it. I think you've got somebody else going to test it out though for you. Or are you just stretching?
Okay, I can see Jim Davies warming up.
I like it a lot. But I just ask a few questions. One is, in a sense, the pie. Why do we have really thick lines? I just think there's a sense of boundaries being created, and hopefully they're not boundaries between teachers and students and colleagues. So, maybe some merged colours or something could be helpful. I have a big question about what is a curriculum entitlement? Who decides? I think who decides what kids learn in school is a really, really important question that ought to be continually thought about. And the last bit that I was having a conversation about was to pick up on the summative, formative assessment ideas. both of those tend to have an involvement of teacher. And, you know, the 24/7 lifelong learner is not going to be always connected to a teacher. So there's a question I have about, is there something called informative assessment where the learner is generating feedback about the quality and the extent of their learning as they're progressing through various stages of learner maturity? So it's just, you know, I love what's been done, but just some things that start to come to mind as a result. So
I think you've started the conversations that are the next level of conversation that leaders would be having with their teachers. I think, you know, that question of, and that's provocatively why these things are there. I mean, the wording of this was kind of pushed around, and yeah, it was our circle work, wasn't it? Pushed around and around and around, and then eventually landed on with lots of thinking such as that behind it. So that question of curriculum entitlement, you know, so how is curriculum entitlement mapped, reviewed and refined? It's there to be a provocative question for you as a leader to then have that conversation about, so what is entitlement? I think, you know, there's in some people's minds, entitlement is around content. And so, you know, if I was having a maths conversation, entitlement isn't just around the maths content and concepts, it's around the proficiencies. So, you know, recently in PD, we've started talking about, have you covered the proficiencies? If you're going to be talking to me about, I need to cover the curriculum, yes, you do. And the proficiencies are in the curriculum. So have you covered the proficiencies? Let's go back to our learning design and think about how we've done that. So having that conversation about entitlement being broader than content concepts, but leaving it open enough for leaders to have that conversation with their teachers and take it to that next step when they're ready for that next step. And similarly with, I think you point around the learner and them being lifelong learners. That idea of, so in the green section of the pie where we've talked about student ownership of learning, personally and collectively being developed, the point that you raised was part of the group's conversation at that point about there has to be a residue to this education, and it needs to be a residue that isn't only about the learning that's stuck in terms of the curriculum learning. It's got to be about the how you learn and about students feeling capable of pulling that learning onto themselves in any kind of situation. So that was certainly the conversation that was behind that dot point about enabling students, true formative assessment really being enabling students to take on that feedback and the next steps for themselves. And to be honest, you lose some of it when you try and simplify it, which is obviously something that people value. You then lose where the conversation went because you're trying to kind of pare that back and just pull up the one big thing that might hopefully lead to the conversation, leaders having that conversation. So yeah, I think you both kind of went over some of the conversations that we had in getting to this point and the conversations that we anticipated leaders would then have with their teachers to get to an in their context working, using this as a working document.
I want to just add a couple of things, and then I want to show you some video blogs, because I'm conscious that at least a couple of people who are working with us remotely tonight haven't actually seen the document that we've been referencing. So they will be able to see these video blogs, and that'll give us something in common to share. So we started with the concept of an infographic. It turned into a poster. We always saw that poster as either being a hyperlinked PDF or the basis by which you enter a portal with a set of tools and resources curated behind it to support you in the conversations that you might have in your schools. So to understanding that TEFL would be there, and Ladam materials would be there, and anything else that SASPA's already produced will be there. We've gone out and we've organised 5 video blogs. And Penny and I have had a quick discussion, and we've decided that we'll show 2 tonight. One will be Jane Heath, who's not here, and one will be Wendy, who's not here. And Penny, who is here, she'll keep hers in the bank until she's out of the room. So Heather, Geetha, Lauren, Peter, and others, hopefully you'll be able to see these on your screen. But if you can mute your audio microphone so we don't get feedback, that'd be great. Oh, hang on, there might not be sound yet. Just wait. Get ready though. Round of applause for Jane. Okay. Let's have one from Wendy. So you can see these are short hits, 2 or 3 minutes. Round of applause for Wendy. She might hear it from Jama's kitchen, where she and the other Eastern Secondary Principals Alliance are meeting, hopefully over a glass of wine. Okay, so there are 5 of these video blogs. There's TEFL, there's LADAM, there's other SASPA materials. What else would you like to see populated, either in a portal or in a hyperlinked PDF version of the poster, that would help you hold conversations with staff in your school about any of the 13 questions? A couple of minutes at your tables, maybe having a conversation about that. And then I'll ask Penny and Carla to... Would you like to do the microphone stuff? Or? Yeah. I've got to turn that off.
Not a bad group now.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on air, and we've got Penny, who's the convener of our Curriculum and Pedagogy Committee, joint sponsor of this work, and Penny's going to rove with the mic.
I am coming straight here to this fabulous input. We've been having a great conversation. Go for it.
Thanks, Penny. I guess I was following on from some of Jim's conversation, having been involved with lots of model development over a number of years for a range of projects, that we were talking about how those components interact and what the overlay might be, how they work together and what that might look like when they're interacting with one another, and how this might relate when we're looking at implementation science, if we're looking at it through a model perspective, of being able to implement that and some of that, the theory behind that and what it might look like in practice. And the one other component that straight away looked at and thought, well, parent community groups is perhaps, that might be in there as a layer, but does that need to just be stated somewhere? And we're looking at some of those other disadvantaged groups. What might that look like in practice? And we talk about teacher collaboration. Are we talking about other staff and leaders as well? So thinking about what that might look like, including all the staff in that.
Thank you. And we were talking also about the layers and finding the connections and the alignment with some of the resources that are also currently available, that the Australian Curriculum Leaders website and the Bringing It to Life tool that's also there. And here we go to Rodney.
Yeah, I suppose I was interested in how the portal or the resources that are behind this might align to, say, the TEFL framework. So I think the the TEFL framework is, quite large, and so if these questions were able to sort of, I think they would go away towards simplifying how people access the TEFL. If they go through the the student ownership of learning, developed personal and collective. If those resources link through to those relevant parts of TEFL, could do a good job of simplifying TEFL for people.
Thank you, Rodney. Anybody else for a comment, feedback? Thank you. Meredith sneezed.
Isn't it wonderful? I'm still here, Penny. All right, we now have how many past scholars of Woodville? 1, 2, and Peter. Phil? 3.
Yes, I'm here.
Going back to Tony's comment about the one-pager, I do appreciate that some people are deeply, committed to TEFL, but I would argue that most of the TEFL booklets are very wordy. A lot of people are saying that. And all I would like to say is this is asking questions in the same way as the art and science of teaching has designed questions. The art and science of, sorry, Val, I know Val knows this is my, the art and science teaching also has a compendium. You know how you were saying hyperlink? Yes. So you've got a very simple one-pager and you hyperlink. So if people are asking questions, all right, so if you want to explore how to do this with staff, they're going to say, well, show me an example. It's an online compendium that gives a range of choices. It never says you have to do this. So if you're going to hyperlink this, I personally would be very disappointed if it only referenced TEFL and didn't reference, and I'm not saying there might be other teaching and learning frameworks, but I really think we'd be missing an opportunity to link with other frameworks for effective teaching and learning.
Seriously. Thank you, Meredith. Anybody remotely who would like to have an input into this conversation? Is anybody there?
I'm here, but I've had a few words, already.
Nothing more to say, Peter?
We like your speaking voice.
Any other? Go on, Peter. Anything to say?
No, I'm okay at the moment. That's good.
Right. Anybody else in the room who's got anything to add?
Lauren.
Go on.
Sorry, it's Cherie. I'm online.
Hi, Cherie.
Hello. Lauren and I have been texting back and forth and doing the lid talking thing. We were wondering whether links to the guidebooks would be useful.
Your literacy and numeracy guidebooks?
Yeah, was that considered?
That's a given.
Okay, and then the other comment we had was around the teacher co-designing with students. We think it's more than that because often, particularly in secondary, our students need to take the lead on that more so than co-design. They might design with their peers as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So maybe thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Cherie.
No worries.
I'm going back to Jim Davies.
Just very briefly, to pick up on the implementation issue, just having a bit of a chat with Peter, it seems to me that there's a big opportunity here for principal school leaders to be the disruption. Pick it up, work with it, and be the disruption that creates a new way. The leadership's got to come from the true professionals of teaching and learning, the leadership of it. So I think there's a big opportunity here.
Thank you, Jim. Any other comments from the floor or from Aoife? Carla.
We were talking a little bit about what are the next steps and what's the audience in which this is going to go to. And I think that's an important part of getting traction in this space and what, I guess, mandate are we going to have with our teachers to actually start having some of these conversations alongside some of the other existing documents that they are already exposed to. So I don't know if thinking's been done in that space yet, but I think that's a really important part of that next step.
Okay, I think my mic's still working. I probably should have mentioned this up front. We did actually speak as a group of 3 partners in this work, SAPA, SASPA and the department, about the merit of having the AEU as partners. Now, in the end, compromises have to be made. So to have the department imprimatur on there meant not having the AEU imprimatur on there. And you can read into that as much as you like, and I've just realised that this is being recorded. So another career-ending move. So what we have done behind the scenes is Angela Falkenberg and myself met with the AEU executives and walked them through this document and talked about what it is and what it isn't. And they were clear that from their perspective, they didn't see that there would be any issue in a dialogic approach to conversations at a site level around pedagogy. Contextually, though, we know as leaders that you've got to read the room, and things are pretty difficult at the moment. So I wouldn't expect anyone to march into the staff room tomorrow and say, I've seen the light, and it is. Further down the track, when things settle down, there'll be an opportunity to move with confidence, knowing that Lara Golding, Dash Taylor-Johnson, Jan Murphy, the elected officers of the association, have seen this document, see the worth of this document, and hopefully once it's populated as either a hyperlinked PDF or a portal, we'll see that it actually makes teachers' work easier rather than more complex. So we said we'd finish at 6:30, but I looked at you all when you came into the room, and as good looking as you are, I saw that you were tired and a bit kind of wrung out, and I'd like to wind things up if I can and say that you have been part of a soft launch. And that's what we were permitted to have. So we've gone as soft as we could. We will provide the resource to everyone through our networks, Professional Practice, SASPA and SAPA. It is a document that is agreed to. It is a document that is supported with resources, but it is not a mandated document. So it can't be used in that way. And I'll make that clear when we issue it through our networks. And if we do have a conference this year, I'm looking forward to being able to take you through the portal or the hyperlinks and show you a lot more of what we've done behind the scenes. And I thank everybody for attending tonight, and can I thank you to those attending remotely and disappearing very quickly, being very patient with me. Please stay behind. Please enjoy each other's company at a safe distance, and take care on the way home, and treat yourself this weekend, because it's been one of the tougher weeks in education, I think. So, cheers. And thank you to Jean and the Open Access team for making this possible. And we would have normally filled the room. Yeah. And,
thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah. So we've got the recording of that, so that'll be good.
Thank you.